Good day, kids. Guess where I'm at today? Glad to see ya. Today we're going to work some more on Psalms chapter 23. That's probably one of the most famous verses, or actually chapter in the Bible that's read usually at funerals. But there's a lot of good stuff in here, and today we're going to talk about Psalms chapter 23. Psalms chapter 23 is the most often quoted Psalms. It's about how God is our shepherd. And in today's part of Psalms 23, we're celebrating how God overflows our cups with blessings. So what kind of things do you think are blessings? I'm going to read to you from Psalms chapter 23, verse 4 and 5. And what it says is, actually we're going to read from verse 5. You prepare a feast for me right in front of my enemies. You pour oil on my head. My cup runs over. So your cup runs over. So that's what we're going to be talking about, is how blessings pour over. If you are a believer in Jesus Christ, a lot of times what happens is before that, you probably didn't realize that certain things in your life were blessings, that maybe were good or bad things that happened to you, but we're going to learn more about that today. So in Psalms chapter 23, it sounds like we have a delicious feast with those overflowing foods. So what is your favorite food that you would love for God to bless you with? Maybe it's pizza, maybe it's spaghetti, maybe it's Mexican food, maybe it's a bunch of cheese. I would really like that. But you know what? Our cup overflows with blessings. Maybe it's not pizza or cookies, but our cup overflows with blessings from God, like love and goodness. And we're going to find out more about what the Bible says. Everything in the Bible is true, and it's God's message for you. Plus, we can talk with God anytime. So we've been learning about Psalms chapter 23 of the Bible that was written as a song about how God is like a shepherd. One thing shepherds do for sheep is to provide for them. In fact, David, who wrote Psalms 23, talked about God's provision this way, which I read to you, Psalms chapter 23, verse 5. It says, You prepare a feast for me right in front of my enemies. You pour oil on my head. My cup runs over. David said that his cup overflowed with blessings. Another way to say that is God blesses us. Let's make cups that we would have made cups today, but I actually brought a cup from home. But we're going to talk about a woman in the Bible by the name of Ruth and how her cup overflowed with blessings. Ruth's story started out with a full cup. She got married. Then her husband and brother-in-law and her father-in-law all died. The thing you have to understand about that time in the Bible is a lot of marriages were arranged. And if your husband died, that meant that if your brother-in-law was not married, he would have had to marry you so that the property that your husband owned would stay in that family. So that was one of the reasons why a lot of marriages were arranged back in biblical days. But after Ruth experienced those deaths, her husband died, her brother-in-law, and her father-in-law. She had no one left for her to marry, so she would have been left as a widow. She would have been very poor and would have had no one to take care of her. However, she did have somebody left with her, and she had her mother-in-law. Her name was Naomi, and we're going to talk about her. That's not exactly an overflowing cup, but Ruth followed her mother-in-law Naomi to Judah, and God started giving her blessings. First, Ruth and Naomi needed food. Ruth decided to go to a farm owned by a rich relative of her father-in-law. She was hoping to pick up any grain that the workers at the farm missed. Have you ever heard the word gleaning? Gleaning was just that. What happened would have been like, if you guys seen any wheat fields or hay fields that have been harvested lately, you're going to see what's called the winnow, which is kind of like the shaft of the stuff that floats in the air. So they would have left her she would have been gleaning, so that would have been whatever was left after it was harvested. Like if there were corn, if you were harvesting corn, she might have been able to get like corn that fell off the wagon, or they spilled it on the ground or anything like that. That would have helped. That's how she would have gotten food in that time, because they didn't have some of the systems that we have in place now to help take care of people like that. So she was hoping to pick up any grain that the workers at the farm missed. Ruth didn't get just a little bit of grain, and listen to this. I'm going to read to you from Ruth chapter 2, verses 8 and 9, and then I'm going to read some more to you from Ruth chapter 4. So Ruth chapter 2, verses 8 and 9 say, So Boaz said to Ruth, Dear woman, listen to me. Don't pick up grain in any other field. Don't go anywhere else. Stay here with the women who work for me. Keep your eye on the field where the men are cutting grain. Walk behind the women who are gathering it. Pick up the grain that is left. I've told the men not to bother you. When you are thirsty, you get a drink. Take water from the jars that the men have filled. Well, back in biblical days, they didn't do that to, one of the reasons why they would have done that was to protect her from, maybe somebody would have tried to kidnap her or something like that, not to stir up fear within you, but it would not have been safe for her to have been a woman by herself back in that day. So it goes on to read about in Ruth chapter 2, verses 15 through 18. And what that says is Ruth got up to pick some more grain, and Boaz gave orders to his men. He said, let her take some stalks from the women have tied up. Don't tell her she can't. Even pull out some stalks for her. Leave them for her to pick up. Don't tell her she shouldn't do it. So Ruth picked up grain to the field until evening. Then she separated the barley from the straw. The barley weighed 30 pounds. She carried it back to town. Her mother-in-law saw how much she had gathered. Ruth also brought out the food left over from the lunch Boaz had given her, and she gave it to Naomi. So see how God provided, or actually her own family even provided for her. Wow, God blesses us. And sure, he sure blessed Ruth with food. Boaz also gave her water to drink while she worked. Our cups are filling up, so let's see what else God did to bless Ruth. So in Ruth chapter 4, verses 9 and 10, it says, and Boaz said to the elders and all the people, today you are the witnesses. You have seen that I have bought land from Naomi. I have bought all the property that had belonged to Amalek, Chilion, and Mahlon. I also have taken Ruth, who is from Moab, to become my wife. She is Mahlon's widow. I've decided to marry her so the dead man's name will stay with his property. Now his name won't disappear from the family line of his hometown. Today you are witnesses. So what does it mean to be a witness? It means that you have actually seen something with your own eyes. It's like a witness to a crime. It's very difficult for them to tell a lie. They pretty much stick to the same story. That's one way that you would know that that person was actually telling the truth. So Ruth got married, and God filled her cup with the blessings of a new husband. So let's find out about Boaz and add him to Ruth's cup of blessings. Tell me about any weddings you've been to, or tell somebody in your family about any weddings you've been to. And that's not all God did. God blesses us, and he filled Ruth's cup with plenty of food, a wealthy husband, and more. Ruth had a baby. And here's something really cool about the baby, Obed. When Obed grew up, he got married, and he and his wife had a son named Jesse. Jesse grew up and had a son named David. Remember David, the guy who wrote Psalms? He was Ruth's great-grandson, and he became a king. Not only that, David was one of Jesus' great-great-great-grandparents. How awesome would that be if he was your great-great-great-grandpa? Wow, now we've seen God bless Ruth with food and family, and God blesses us too. And it looks like there's still room before our cups are overflowing, so let's thank God for how he blessed us today. Our cup overflows with blessings. God blesses us with so much. Food, family, and money are some of the things God blessed us with, but Psalms 23 lists a few more blessings. So in Psalms chapter 23, verse 6, it says, I am sure that your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever. So just imagine what that's. You have God's goodness, his unfailing love, and you'll live in the house of the Lord forever. Well, I'm going to actually do an object lesson for you guys this week. And what I'm going to show you is, you see this cup. And the way that it works is, when you are counting your blessings, and it's kind of like having this straw. Like, watch how I try to pour this water through the hole of this straw. Well, I'm not going to get very many blessings if I'm just getting it through the straw, right? It's going to be really hard for me to get them. But what happens when I take the lid off? It's just like letting God into my heart. The blessings just keep flowing and flowing and flowing. And sometimes we're not very thankful for the things that we do have, like love, money, food. But look, when you let go and you let God do it, look, it's just like the water. It just overflows. And when you actually have that in your heart, It's just the joy that flows out of your heart that's going to be the light to the world. Hope you guys have a great week. Hope to see you soon. God bless you.